welcome. I'm really honored and I welcome you all from our GTX family to this amazing premier event of ours, Billion Dreams 2024, India's largest return to India hiring event and conference for NRIs. And we are really privileged to have such an esteemed panel of senior leaders with us today. We're really looking forward to an insightful session. And I'm really happy to have Namita Jain with us. She is the Director in Size Digital Transformation Nasscom and a seasoned leader with extensive experience in strategy, innovation, and sustainability. Namita has been instrumental in driving business transformation across industries, and her expertise spans leadership roles in Fortune 500 companies and global organizations. She brings a wealth of knowledge in building impactful strategies for growth and sustainable development. We are fortunate to have her insights today at this session. Thank you so much for joining us, Namita, and over to you from here.
Thank you, Shobha. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be on the GTX platform for this IdeaCon session as part of the Billion Dreams 2024 initiative. We are going to be talking about from India to the world, technology, innovation, and impact. A very powerful topic, a topic that needs attention, discussion, and a lot more action, and this is the right time for it. So I'm thrilled to invite all our viewers and listeners to this insights-packed 60-minute session. We have some of the top industry leaders with us, and they will be dissecting the evolution of how Indian industries have embraced technology, embraced innovations, and how that has led to shaping up of the India technology story thus far. We've seen significant competitive positions being assumed by the Indian organizations, the large ones as well as the startups when it comes to technology, the latest being AI and Gen AI, right? But we also know that we need to be a lot more agile, we need to be a lot more aggressive, not only in our approach to technology adoption, but also in our approach to train the talent that goes behind technology adoption in the country. With that, I would like to introduce our panel today and would request them to give a brief introduction of themselves. We have with us Balaji Srinivasan from AMD. We have with us Radhika Chennakeshavula from Silicon Labs and Isaac Duthie from Collins Aerospace. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for joining us today. Viewers, let me tell you that on today's panel, we have almost 100 years of tech expertise with us that's going to discuss India's future in technology. With that, would like to request Balaji if you can get us started with a quick introduction of yourself.
Namita and dear viewers, good morning and good evening to everyone. Thanks for being part of this panel and the GTX Billion Dreams event. A quick intro about myself, right? Given actually Namita gave a background about what we are trying to achieve. So let me keep it short, like in a minute. So Srinivasan, representing AMD. I am the site leader for the server BU in India and working across global infrastructure with the Taiwan, US and China teams. So what I'm known for, I build scalable engineering teams from scratch in India across different companies. I worked at Cisco, and then recently I joined AMD in this year as a server engineering site leader. So I'm responsible for balancing the India site strategy with changing partner ecosystems. Like as Namita rightly pointed out, so we need to keep reskilling ourselves. That's the part I am in part of AMD India ecosystem at the moment. So for GPU teams across in India, we do have a big teams in India, US and Canada. So I'm trying to just bring that ecosystem back in India. So that's been I'm been sorted with. And I served as a global core team member for all the industry level initiatives, university relations, and then chaired a lot of family balance core teams, and then actually branding programs for various companies. Currently, I'm with AMD. So my key motto is actually like I'm always try to be, not to be a success, rather I provide value to my teams as well as on a personal note. And I always believe in a good reputation is more valuable than success or wealth. That's about me, team.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji. Great to have you on board. Radhika, if I may request you to go next. Sure. Yeah. Honored to be here with a wonderful panel. Thanks, Namita. Hello, everybody. Good morning and good evening. I'm Radhika Chennakeshavula. I'm the CIO for Silicon Labs. It's a global role, but I'm based out of Hyderabad, so I drive this role from here. Uh, prior to uh, Prior to joining Silicon Labs 5 months ago, I was with Western Digital, leading their global infrastructure and engineering from India, and I did play a role in setting up Micron India Center. That's where I had association with GTX in the past. I had pretty good success with hiring some of the good R&D talent in terms of NRI return to India aspect. So that's where when GTX reached out, I said, fantastic, great to be part of the panel. Majority of my leadership stint was with GE. Most of my career I've spent with consumer and industrial products in the IT teams, and for the last 6-7 years I think I got lucky with getting into a semicon, and this is a place I think I'm now loving and enjoying. Looking forward for a great discussion. Over to you, Namita.
Thank you so much, Radhika. Welcome on board. Isaac.
Hey, thank you, Namita, and good morning and good evening, everyone. And just a quick intro of me. And I'm Isaac Raj, and I am with Collins Aerospace Global Engineering and Technology Center at Bangalore, and I lead the Connected Aviation Solutions business and a couple of center of excellences, and one of them is being the data analytics, which we do for the Collins Aerospace across the world. So predominantly, my major experience is in the aerospace, and a short instant I also spent mostly on the embedded systems. Mostly worked with product companies and with GCCs currently. At Collins, we provide advanced technologies and solutions to build, especially the safer and more connected systems and solutions for the aerospace industry. And in India, especially for Collins, we provide systems which include systems going the autonomous flight and towards digital transformations to make the passenger journey seamless. For operational efficiency of airports, airlines. And recently, I think every industry is moving towards the sustainability, and we do provide a lot of solutions for sustainable aviation initiatives, like working on sustainable aviation fuel, more electric aircraft, structures for advanced aircrafts using new materials, flight path optimization, and all of this. So most of my career I spent in the aerospace, and so happy to be here as part of this panel.
Thank you so much, Isaac. So fantastic to have this panel, because I think it's very, very relevant, and I'm sure your insights are going to be extremely enriching. We'll get started with our discussion. We talk a lot about India trying to be ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. But that also requires us to look a little, in the past to see what our journey has been. You all have come from organizations that have existed for long, not only in India or there's units in India, but globally you've seen the entire spectrum of technology transition in terms of newer technologies, the speed of adoption, etc. What, in your views, has the Indian ecosystem done to adapt to this technology innovation, particularly when we talk about deep tech, because that's where the real disruptive difference happens. We talk about deep tech generally in the parlance of startups, but I want to keep this question very, very broad in the parlance of all organizations that engage in deep technology. What were some of the key drivers that have driven the Indian ecosystem when it comes to deep technology, innovation, R&D, and where we are today? And I would like to start with you, Radhika. What are your views on what has led us to here?
Sure. Thanks, Namita. Definitely great question to start with. When I introduced, I mentioned that most of my career I've been
I always worked from India, and I got lucky to work with global GCCs all through my career. Right, I have not seen consulting and services side of it. So that way, I have seen the pure evolution from the GCC ecosystem point of view. Right, initially when it started, be it in a IT or an R&D other side. It started as a pure hands on the keyboard and more of an execution, right? Just only the solution delivery part of it. And I've seen this whole transition, including myself taking up roles of pure starting from a delivery to a maturity of global roles driven from India to global CX roles driven from India. So I totally agree with you in terms of how the whole maturity curve has taken place in India, and happy to be part of it. Now, to look at several factors that I think has driven this growth in deep tech, Namita, I think I would want to start with first is the ecosystem input, right? The input for this ecosystem happens from probably the academia, right? We are one of the top engineering producing countries, right? With about 1.5 million engineers being produced every year. So the input of the talent itself starts from there, right? And this input is not just for India. We in fact supply engineers globally, right? So that way it starts with that ecosystem of engineering producing country. And in the past, it was largely supplied to outside, right? And versus when the country started to embrace this engineering and R&D centers in India, the deployment also is continuing. The next phase of these engineers, as many of them are being exported or probably are going outside, as many are being looked internally within the country as well, right? And companies are also crossing probably the expectations, just seeing India as a cost advantage or cost center to seeing it as a talent center, right? Because we provide the real talent and then we provide the value on the product side of it. So that's where I think from the college input to the R&D delivery and the value production that we are doing and being able to do the high-end work, I think that's one big advantage. And cost continues to play a role anyway, right? And next one is, I think, the biggest change that we are seeing, the true drivers that I'm when I look back, that I see one, government embrace this whole change, right? Government policies are getting relatively easier and it's getting better. And then now we are like what? We are one of the world's top third startup ecosystem as well, right? About 120 startups, and then startups feed. One side engineers, one side startups are feeding. Government is very welcoming, and pandemic made it easy to work from anywhere. So even if you're working from India, all that you need to do is just stretch your schedules accordingly, and then boom, you're done. So I think several factors came together, perfect timing.
Fantastic. Talent, the ecosystem around academia and how they have actually helped maintain that pipeline of technology graduates or even improve that, government policies, and obviously cost to a great extent. Great points. Thank you, Radhika. Balaji, if I can come to you now and request you to elaborate a little bit more around aspects related to innovation and R&D and the cost aspect around it. How has that played in our favor?
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Namita. So, to start, with Radhika, she rightly said, my journey also pretty much in India, right? From since my career, I never moved to US. Thing is that because actually India has when I started my career, it started from all the way from the transition center, right? India means actually transition. From there, we moved on from bug fixing, right? From bug fixing, we moved to the feature development, right? From feature development, we moved to own the product. As part of my last assignment with Dell, I led global engineering team driving an end-to-end product development from India, working across the globe, which means I had teams in Taiwan. I had to add to Radhika what she said. We became actually India became a leader in actually driving things from end-to-end. What it led actually that gives you an ecosystem to build around across the globe. That's point number one. And as Radhika rightly pointed out, I can bring a latest example. Lenovo is actually manufacturing an AI server out of India. This is the last 2 days back announcement came. And also, you go back like 2 weeks back, our PM and our Minister of Communications, Ashwini Vaishnav, he lauded about actually how semiconductors are moving things to India. Semiconductor companies like Micron, NXP, AMD, Intel, everyone is actually like moving towards India, right? So that's another government actually made it a little bit easier, and things are going to get easier, much easier. And because we are having a good ecosystem. Second, third, cost effectiveness, right? When it comes to cost, more than everything, right? Research and development, actually, like if you look at in the math, simple math, we can get 3 people of good work actually versus others. Cost advantage we are talking about in terms of the research and talent availability. I could see actually there is a big difference between me and my son itself, because actually he is like he is in a final year engineering, right? So he's somewhere actually ahead, and then I'm just trying to catch up with him in the global AI curve, right? So that's what I'm just catching it up. That's another thing. If you look at India ecosystem, right, the one good example I can give you is actually like from a Ola Protein Cloud, right? So they moved all the way from Azure to India. Everything is made in India, right? The entire system actually, like we are talking about a 1 billion valuation, which can be easily compared with some of the global unicorns. That is where India is playing a big role. Again, not only that space, right? Cloud, AI space, and even energy space, even actually in the renewable space, like actually your energy, Ether energy, Rapidos, right? These are all actually like a transportation, go green initiatives from India. So if you not only the semiconductor, not only the system manufacturers, not only the global AI cloud, you can see across all the region, India is playing a significant only towards the global semiconductor space. It's playing across the region, and I see a great development happening across India.
Fantastic. Isaac, if I can come to you on some of the key things that in your observations and in your area, particularly because yours is a lot more protected, a lot more sensitive area in terms of innovation, R&D, trade of IP, if I may say. How have you seen India kind of manage in such a protected space?
Yeah, I think that's so if you just look at the Indian aviation system, right? I think Indian aviation ecosystem has definitely witnessed a huge amount of transformations in the last decade, and quite a good number of innovations. Especially even though it's a control, as you mentioned, that it's more of a controlled space because of the safety. We do find a lot of digital transformations journey which really started from India. Especially if we just look at the seamless passenger journey from online booking till probably the e-gate, e-boarding, right? I think all of these innovations, a lot of these innovations journeys which are probably not that controlled, and on the ground side, I think we have definitely doing much better. One of the examples which I can quote is probably as part of the Global Engineering Center in India, our team has really worked on a product which can provide the ground surveillance on the air side completely, and it was initiated like a project which to provide the GSE operators a view of where their assets are, and later it turned out to be like we are just using it for sustainability, sustainable fuel, because the trucks moving around, they can be on time, not start too early or too late. So when they arrive at the airport, from the airport to the airline drop, you just be on time, so you save fuel, right? So focus towards again sustainability, and that I think also has driven a lot in this space. And the other area where we in India, what we are doing really good in this space is on UAV and UAM space. If we just look at, I think the recent statistic, it shows that we have 50 plus UAM companies in India. We are doing research on this. So I think the space is definitely opening up, and we do have a lot of place to play on the airport traffic management. And I think as all of us know that Gagan is also playing a bigger role there on the which is also indigenously developed by our own scientists, our own engineers. So I think that's that's a space we are really playing good in this from India.
Fantastic. So then I think the next
probably logical question that comes to mind, because a lot has changed, not just, and as all of you rightly mentioned, a lot has changed in the way government's positioning has been when it comes to opening up FDI investments in certain very, very important sectors, setting up the Digital India, Startup India, Make in India, Skill India initiatives, etc. A lot of that has had significant impact, and I think all of us have seen it. I'd like to, get your perspectives on one. What are some of the significant global interventions made in India, coming from India, created in India, that you see impacting or reshaping global industries? And when it comes to global level impact or that level of disruptive impact, we know that a significant onus is on being a crucial element of the supply chain or the value chain. Where do you think India is? So, if I may request all of you to just reflect on your industries. We have semiconductors here, we have hardcore engineering R&D, we have the aerospace. If you were to just look at your specific areas or any other example you may want to take, something or some development that has had global impact and that has been key to the overall value chain. Maybe Balaji, if we can go with you first.
Yeah, thank you, Namita. So it's a good point. As I said in my previous answer, so there was a constant push from the government. Actually, I could see that government is taking multiple initiatives to bring Make in India, right? Make in India in terms of servers, in terms of systems. Everything is Make in India. Similarly, semiconductors or 3 years back, right? Thanks to the government. So we are able to expand our global footprint in terms of the manufacturing. Everything, as I said, so we saw actually Lenovo is coming into India to make an AI-based server. Make in AI. That plant is going to be based out of Puducherry, right? It's a separate state. Similarly, like you can see, the AMD expanded its presence, right? As I said, we have, if you take a business in US, we have a similar footprint in India, right? Basically to support the India ecosystem plus support the global ecosystem. Be it a client segment, be it a server segment, be it graphic segment, right? Any segment you take it, AMD has a very, very big presence in India at the moment. Similarly, not only AMD, we see a completely, what is driving this? It's all digital transformation, right? We are actually like in the world of digitization. And even I make a point earlier, right? So also only AI cannot take you alone actually if you don't have a semiconductor in place, right? Semiconductor, because everything cannot be done through the software. Semiconductor is the bare metal of it, right? Because all the things of the software without the latency can be powered through the semiconductors, right? All the large language models, everything is actually being driven from actually like semiconductor, which is nothing but AMD is powering those things, right? AMD is in all the technology segment. Similarly, all our other friends in the semiconductor ecosystem, they're setting up a big teams in India, and we see a big multinational centers in all the companies where I work, Namita.
Fantastic. Before I carry on, would like to introduce to our viewers Kopal, who's been able to join us. Thank you, Kopal, so much for being able to join and for taking the time today. So a quick introduction. Kopal Sarin Raj is the India CIO and Vice President of the Technology Division of Wabtec. Kopal, if I can request you for a quick 1-minute introduction, and then we'll get back to our discussion.
Yeah, sorry, I had some issues with the link, I guess. So I've been in the IT industry for almost close to 27, 28 years and seen a whole paradigm shift of the way work has been happening. I am currently with Wabtec, which acquired GE Transportation. So this is a railway domain that we are in terms of transportation and manufacturing of all the transportation, locomotive, metro, components, etc.
Great. Good to have you. So, Balaji, thanks for mentioning that. Now, if I may go to Radhika, what in your view has been one or two of our key contributions to the global value chain?
Sure. Namita, before I jump into the semiconductor, that's where I am in, one thing that comes to my mind immediately is the Covaxin, right? I mean, look at the way we did. And I'm in Hyderabad, so I can't complete this panel discussion without touching pharma. That's one major industry, right? Now coming to the semiconductor part of it, Namita, in the big shift in last few years, I think in the past, when before pandemic, while there is a shift started towards the India and semicon, the whole pandemic expedited this a lot more in the interest of diversifying the whole supply chain, right? Like the way Taiwan at some point in time has done starting from government to private investors have done a huge investment, and they have become a hub of manufacturing when it came to most of the fabrications, etc. It's done from Taiwan, right? And we have an advantage of time zone for the East because of manufacturing being here. And I think that's where most of the semiconductor, in last 3 semiconductors that I'm part of it, be it Silicon Labs or Western Digital or Micron, see that geographic benefit. And that's where I think they have set up their R&D centers. And all the companies that have worked in semiconductor, India is the second largest site after the headquarters. And in one of the companies, in fact, India was bigger than the headquartered company as well. That's because of the time zone advantage that you have, which means purely diversifying your supply chain, right? That gives a huge advantage. And on top of it, then now when with government policies, as I indicated, when there's so much focus on setting up manufacturing itself in India, I think it takes a couple of years, but once that happens, I think the whole end-to-end product delivery can happen from India. I don't see a reason why it can't, because again, I when semiconductor companies are willing to move C-suite roles to India, and their R&D centers are in India, and then manufacturing happens in India, it is totally end-to-end, entire supply chain can be done in some of these tech industries. I'm so excited.
Great, fantastic. Isaac, if I can come to you and talk a little bit about not just the current role that we are playing in the tech supply chain, but some of the advantages that we bring when it comes to emerging tech industries. For example, you took the example of how we have 50 plus UAV companies in India. I'm sure that number is going to grow a lot faster. We've seen that in space tech, the downstream side. We probably would be seeing that from a competitive advantage point in pharma, or maybe in certain very specific sectors, electric vehicles. What could be the differentiating aspects that India could bring to the global arena when it comes to speeding up technology adoption in some of the emerging areas?
Yeah, I think let me again quotes with respect to the aerospace industry. I think you quoted about the UAV and the technology adoptions, especially in the aerospace industry, is really slow, right? Because of the safety reasons, and technologies get matured slowly and then get into. But what we also see is that the UAV, where you are able to prove a lot of these technologies in a aircraft where you don't have people, right? I think as we move towards more autonomous flights, electric aircrafts initiatives, all of these things which are fueling it, we are able to do a lot more things in the UAV and the UAM space before we put it onto the the bigger planes. So that is one area we are definitely exploring that. India as a country, as we see that the passenger traffic is significantly increasing, we do see a huge opportunity for us to adapt to new technologies as we move on to a lot more greener greenfield airports and extension of these airports, modernization, which we can go away with the legacy and then start fresh, inducting new technologies. I think that is another space where we could play a significant role. The other area we are just looking at, as we as the number of fleets are increasing, we do see a huge amount of MROs and others being set up in India, and the skills, the labors, what we need, to scale up that organization, is another major area, which we can play and support the rest of the world. Also, if, geographically, if I just look at, we are probably placed close to all the emerging markets in this industry, right? So as we are growing and really making technology advancements in this space, it's easy for us to approach to all this time zone which are pretty close to us, and it is we can take an advantage of it.
Great point. If I can come to you, Kopal, with the same concept, we've so far discussed with the group what are some of the technology interventions that have led us to where we are as a country when it comes to the overall technology story, and where do we see differentiating factors. So some of the things that have been discussed are around talent, around our cost advantage that continues to be there, and also probably our approach in certain strategic sectors, the way the government policies and the government action is helping us. For example, the semiconductors. When I come to core manufacturing, where your interest lies, we've seen a lot of schemes. Where do you see the real differentiation for India to position itself in the global manufacturing arena? And are there specific, would you call out certain very specific areas in manufacturing, be it automotive, be it electronics, or across the board do you see, and how do you see us playing a differentiating role?
I think the attempts are being made across the board for sure. In terms of the innovations that are happening, in terms of the supplier ecosystem around us as well, and the supplier quality measurements and systems and standardization of these metrics, if it was being manufactured in US or Europe versus in India. So all of that has certainly helped us to kind of grow in our journey. Even at Wabtec, we are looking, of course, a lot of the Make in India helps us to kind of drive the cost story even for the European market. So we do export out of India. For Europe, we do export to even places like Africa in terms of components and looking at locomotives as well. And all of this is only happening because of the incentives that the government is providing. The whole ecosystem becoming a little more cost conscious and competitive to that effect as well. Right? I mean, I think our own engineering mindset also, earlier it would be that if you have designed a product for something that sells maybe outside in US or Europe, there were certain constraints to bring that product into India, right? But the flexibility that engineering is able to bring in today in terms of being able to customize the designs, across different geographies is helping us as well. And otherwise not going out to be a very, large investment per se, let's say if you need to customize a product for the India environment. So to that effect, I think a lot of impetus has certainly come into the manufacturing space, and in terms of the tax benefits also that we are getting, we see a lot of advantage there for sure.
Sounds great. So if I were to wrap up, I think in terms of what we've discussed so far, we are very strong when it comes to our talent, our cost advantage. We've significantly ramped up in the way we position ourselves competitively, and that's been not so much a policy shift alone, but it's been a significant mindset shift altogether that we are beginning to see now. Then the next logical thing for us to discuss is, while we are talking 2047, a big vision, but if you were to look in over the next 3, 5, 7 years, let's say, what would be some of the crucial elements that you think are missing, or if I may rephrase, need work and need immediate urgent attention, be it infrastructure, be it policy, be it education at scale. We could really argue that we need to skill everybody on AI, Gen AI, or at least Gen AI, or the usability of it, but any other such aspects that you think are very, very critical and need attention for us to really nail it? Otherwise, we kind of risk missing the bus.
Yeah, maybe I can just start on if you want me to start.
Sure, Isaac. Yes.
So definitely think as the aerospace is poised for growth, especially in India. Some of the infrastructure, definitely the challenges as we are looking at, the airport capacity, the airport modernization, as government policies definitely, supporting for looking at those schemes where we could, things are moving towards tier 2, tier 3 cities and, have low cost airlines. So definitely airport capacity and modernization is one area from an infrastructure perspective. Looking at MROs and the government has definitely created a lot of SE zones, especially for aerospace. I think that's a great boon for that industry, at least. The another major infrastructure challenge what we also have is on the ground infrastructure, especially for efficient logistics and supply chain. And since a lot of these movements especially for the aerospace industry happens across the world, because we don't really have the raw material for everything within the country. So there's a good amount of ground infrastructure efficiency for logistics and support. From a policy perspective, I think especially for the aerospace industry, harmonizing our standards with the global standards, for safety and others, and definitely, we are, moving towards that. Promoting, like a green aviation infrastructure initiative. As we're talking about, a lot of sustainable aviation fuel. All of these, it cannot be done by a single party or single, entity. We need a lot of infrastructure for transporting, storing, and all of these. So as we need a lot of infrastructure as well as the policy changes. From a talent perspective, probably I think we are definitely doing good. We are scaling up. There are a lot of skill, and especially for aerospace, there's a body set up for aerospace and aviation sector skill council, right, ASSC, to upskill the workforce, especially for aerospace industry. And that's a great step where academia, government, entrepreneurs, a lot of people, and the startups, everybody coming together to make this really a success.
Yep.
Great,
So
great points. Yes,
please. I could pick up on where Isaac left. Right, one point I want to add simply on two spaces. Right, one is the semiconductor, another one is the automobile and electric vehicles. Right, so Isaac said, actually we have an abundance of talent. Talent is not a concern. Right? Example of electric vehicles or automotive. So government need to start incentivizing the EVs so that actually your global warming can come down. Significantly it can come down. That's point number one. Point number two, charging infrastructure. If I look at in the US versus India actually needs to invest in charging infrastructure, right? So that actually more. And then R&D, right? R&D actually we are doing pretty well there, because I given multiple examples, right? We given Aether, we have given Rapido, and then actually even, for example, as latest as we speak, even Elon Musk is setting up a Tesla center in India, right? So there is a good amount of research and development is happening on this, but sector is key for the automobile area. In the semiconductor space, one of the constant problem where we hit is actually when we manufacture a chip from Taiwan, in US next day it is available in US, whereas in India it goes through the regulatory things. Now actually it's under the guidance of the government. Actually we are getting it faster. We are now getting it in a week. We are getting it in 4 days. If we can make it turn around like that, then definitely you could see a complete ecosystem can be built out of India with the global players like the supply chain, what Radhika mentioned, for example Foxconn, Wistron, all those guys are setting up the shop. It can be even more faster, Namita.
Great points. Thanks, Balaji. And some interesting points coming out. Green, more incentives, regulatory positioning. Radhika, if you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely. Great points from Balaji. I think I again, I don't want to reiterate on the government side of it. I think all that we need is a momentum, right? Continue that momentum so that this whole government changes, etc., is not again taking us a couple of steps back, where we already walked forward. So that momentum has to be there. Now, touching on on the talent side of it, because when you look at the horizons of like 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, then the key part is, I think there are some questions that are coming in the similar lines in terms of readiness of the talent as well, right? So if you look at VLSI or some of the chip designs, etc., IITs are embracing so well in terms of catching up with the modern technologies and making the students ready immediately for chip design and so on, right? Now, how much it is going to the Tier 2 or Tier 3 colleges, because if you're talking about 1.5 million engineers, not all of them are in IITs, right? Very small chunk is in IITs. So now remaining talent has to be trained and taught on the job, and that's where the speed and go to market and all of that becomes slower. I think somewhere we need to take this whole learning that IITs are embracing faster and quicker to the next layers of engineering colleges, so that our engineering talent quality also improves, whether it is for India or as we export the engineers outside. I think that is a focus area that we need to pay attention to.
That's a very, very crucial point, and thanks for raising that, Radhika. Especially when we're looking at, there's also a comment about how we are doing good with GCCs, but one of the interesting things about GCCs is we are setting up many more global leaders for global roles, but we also need to actually deepen the pipeline of talent when it comes to some of these emerging technologies and sunrise sectors, where we've just been lagging in terms of catching up speed or starting, and the world is far ahead. So we'll probably have to leap, and that's where we probably can't leave it to IITs alone. Kopal, your perspectives on what are some of the crucial things we need to do?
I think we touched upon the infrastructure and the incentives and talent. And just to add to the talent piece, absolutely, I think how do we enable the next level of education systems to be able to prep up to the similar exposure that these tier 1 colleges have is a huge task in front of us as well. And sometimes I also think it's about, if we don't go there, if the students don't go and attend those colleges, right, you're never going to come out of that cycle of that being a tier 2 or tier 3 college as well, right? So, again, it goes into this whole, the professors that are available, the kind of courses and the kind of labs that are available. So I certainly think a lot of investment around that will help us also retain that talent as well, right? That is invested in the growth of India. Then apart from the talent, where we look at the government is in terms of the execution speed and clarity of the outcomes that they are looking at in terms of the, some of the areas that we kind of get stuck in is clarity, let's say, in terms of the specifications of the outcomes, right? There is a clear vision there, but what's the execution elements of that are required to clarify the road ahead so that people can participate in those projects, bids, whatever, and things keep moving. Right. So then again, going back to Radhika saying that momentum only continues with that, because otherwise we just end up with a vision and then on ground we really don't have things moving. Right. So that's an important element to measure ourselves against as well. Right. And yeah, I think we have everything going for India at this point in time in terms of the opportunities, competencies to grow in, skills that were probably not earlier you would think to have a job within India, right? There are growth, the product management space is so big in India as well, right? And the ownership of these products. So these are exciting times for sure.
Fantastic. And I think, you rightly addressed some of the comments some of the questions that we are seeing coming up. How is India competing with tech leaders like the US and China? what advantages do we have and what can be best leveraged. And do we see how do we see the startup ecosystem kind of cope up with that, play to its strengths, existing strengths? And I think if I can just bring in a few data points from our research, our startup ecosystem has definitely grown, but where we need to put a lot more focus is in the deep tech startups, the startups that are really innovating. While we have created a lot of startups who have brought in a lot of revolution at an incremental level, where we've taken something that has been a proven concept outside and we've applied it to the Indian context very successfully. But I think there is equally and probably even more opportunity for us to do completely India-driven R&D innovation, and that is where the next generation of startups can come up and should come up. And I think that should probably be one of the key focus areas, as we look forward to the next set of policies. But I do want to close our discussion and then open it up to Q&A with this one particular question on a lot of our viewers today are, probably thinking what kind of opportunities exist for them. You took a few questions, Radhika, related to VLSI. There's another question where somebody's saying they are a VLSI engineer from Arizona State University, United States. What are the kind of options available to them? But in general, if I were to ask this question, for our talent which went out, got educated outside, if they were to come back to India, what are the opportunities? How should we be inviting them to be a part of the India growth story? Radhika, if you would like to go first.
Sure. I got an opportunity. I got lucky by being part of the GCCs that are being set up from the ground, right? I mean, particularly the Micron one was greenfield, pretty much from ground zero to 3,500 in 3 years. And now again with Silicon Labs as well, we are continuing to hire. So, and then this is across all of the roles, pretty much across all of the roles, right? Now I see quite a few on VLSI side. That's a talent that is lacking in India for sure, right? I hear my peers who are in R&D, both hardware and software side of it, they keep telling me how much talent that they keep looking for, be it in Hyderabad or Bangalore. And Hyderabad, I think, is Bangalore, I think, is relatively slightly more mature when it came to some of these hardware, VLSI and embedded. Hyderabad is picking up, and there's a lot of demand for the talent, right? And Namita, I wanted to touch upon your previous comment about the startup ecosystem and the opportunity there, right? I think somebody asked the question around that aspect as well. We are going through a shift of the whole manufacturing coming to India, and then R&D centers are now increasing the scaling up in India and so on. Typically, startup ecosystem builds on the large company or large ecosystems, right? For example, manufacturing. If I take straight away manufacturing, semiconductor manufacturing alone, right now for startups to think of some startups ideas, we don't have a functional knowledge, right? Because we have never manufactured semiconductor in India, right? It has been either to the Austin and Freescales of the world, or to the east in Taiwan's and Malaysia's and Penang's of the world, right? So this is another gap, right? People who are in those locations where there is manufacturing, and we need functional knowledge in India. If the functional knowledge comes, that's very welcome in India. And then startups can feed on to that functional knowledge, because ideas come when you have a complete knowledge about the problem statement there, right? So right now, if at all there's any lag or any slowdown in the startups, all that I would think of is it's because of the lack of functional knowledge and the problem statement, identifying the problem statements for the startups. So those who are coming back, please come back with the functional knowledge. You are welcome.
Fantastic. Kopal, your thoughts on
so on the startup ecosystem, going what Radhika was saying, We are also trying to start, kind of work with this ecosystem, and we realize the value that this brings in terms of, we have these products which have been sold to the customers. We need to kind of ensure they are up and running, right? And meanwhile, at the same time, try something with newer technology, try out smaller problems. We are also trying to do that and engage with the startups around that to try and bring the functional use cases to them, because the technology they've been exploring and experimenting with that, whilst we do not have the similar leeway or bandwidth to do that. So we are trying to build on, even Nasscom has this startup ecosystem. We try and engage with them to help us to solve certain problems. It's still kind of in the initial stages, but I think there's again a lot of potential there in terms of what value they could bring to us as well, and vice versa. In terms of the jobs that are available, all of a kind, all the ownership is there. In terms of the work that is happening out of here, yes, there were decades ago there was a scenario where you were given half of a module to work on probably, and you would never know the entire end-to-end piece of something. We were just finishing something and that was fitting in as a cog in a larger wheel somewhere. But now the kind of product development that is happening out here is kind of end-to-end, because everybody understands the value that comes again when a team is allowed to work on a product or a module end to end, rather than again distributing it all over. So all kinds of technology stack and all kinds of roles are certainly available here. We are looking for talent that is interested in kind of researching further and trying to solve these problems. So definitely a lot of functional and technical areas that are open.
Fantastic. Isaac, some of your thoughts on this, on how should we be inspiring our global diaspora to participate in our technology development? And that's really not just making technology for India. It's actually helping India make technology for the world.
Yeah, definitely. As we heard from the panelists on leveraging the startup ecosystem, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and especially being corporates where you want to probably leverage some of these faster things which are already done by the startups and leverage. So we do leverage iHubs and others, especially for our also the other thing which I just would like to mention is that especially in the aerospace, and as Kopal talked about, as we move towards more of full product engagements, and what we see today is that people are becoming very specialized in a very niche scale small area, and to build an aircraft systems we need multidisciplinary, right? I think today from our education system, from probably middle school onwards, everybody is on a specialized, and we have narrow view of the other domain. So I think what we see as a gap for building up such end-to-end products from India to the world is especially, I think, the skill gap in understanding multidisciplinary. And so some of the startup ecosystems where they build product, they do bring in that capability. So that's one. And we do find people who are as we talked about Return to India program in the aerospace world. Probably we started as mentioned, right? We started with software and moved towards today product development. A lot of the early phases of the product life cycle probably, which is not done as part of ours, which is probably done on the other side of the world. I think this talent can really bring in those expertise to India, right? Early product life cycle, also towards the end certification. I think that's another major piece on the certification for the aircrafts, right? Safety certification, and which is all happens probably on the other side of the world. And I think this Return to India program through GTX is a great opportunity for us to leverage that, and people can. And I have used the GTX platform before, and I've been definitely successful on bringing some of the niche skills which we needed for our growth. So from a opportunity perspective, I think there are enough number of opportunities as GCCs. Everybody's growing, and I just looked at as we walked into the booth today. I think if I just look at the talent, what was showcased there, I guess everybody has something to offer, and I think the GTX is a great path for them to get in here.
Absolutely, I think very, very pertinent points, Isaac. More about deepening our product presence in the global market, because that enables us to not only think end to end from design to delivery, but also be very, very relevant for the markets that we are in. So thank you for bringing that. With that, I think I would like to wrap up the discussion, but there are some very, very pertinent questions that I would like to take up. Another 5 minutes from our panel. We've spoken a lot about, a lot of the questions are about, whether, how do we make the education system stronger, more relevant? How do we bridge the talent gap? And I think we've spoken about that we cannot just do with the handful of IITs. We actually need to make we don't need more IITs, we need that mindset and that education capability in the existing tier 2, tier 3 colleges. And that's going to be the solution for India. Remember that there's just one MIT in the US, not 100. But then there are many, many tier 2, 3, 4 colleges in US or any of the developed nations that actually have scaled up in terms of what they offer in education. So I think that's the kind of philosophy we need here. There were some questions about there's a question about startup that we addressed. I want to take up this one particular question by Sarin Bose, which says, how important is it to create Indian IP and R&D for the growth, for self-sustenance of technology and to grow it? And I think that's an interesting point, because we typically think that we will bring in talent and then do IP. Do you think there is a flip way to look at it, that we start incentivizing IP creation on a slightly disproportionate level? We start making it a lot more popular. We start talking about it a lot more. I don't think we talk a lot about, the way our academic institutions are innovating. We've lately started seeing a lot more activity by all the IITs, but it's not been very loud. So what do you think should be some of the interventions here when it comes to improving our IP and R&D capacity? And could that be an inviting factor?
Namita, certainly. I think being in semiconductor, IP is our lifeblood. If a company has to survive, generating IP is not an alternate, right? Now that so many of these R&D centers are being set up in India, IP generation patents are in fact the goals. They're part of every R&D engineer's roles and responsibilities. No matter where you are, not just in India, no matter where you are, you need to adopt to the culture of innovation, to the culture of IP and patent generation. And that's true for India as well. So I don't think we have a luxury of simply importing it and then building it. It is happening. That's what I wanted to say. It is happening. The companies that are in India centers are equally, and in some cases, had more patents than outside India. I don't see a lack of the talent or lack of intention or intervention by the companies on that.
Got it. And maybe also we probably need to start thinking about innovation R&D not just from high-end IP creation, but to think about incrementally innovative use cases. We take this example around AI and generative AI and making it very, very useful for India. I think the solutions for India are going to be very unique because our data sets, our problems are unique. That may not require us to create a foundation model from scratch. Just an example. but it definitely allows us to use an existing model in very innovative, different ways with our own data sets, and that's innovation in its own self. And that nothing is stopping us from doing that. We have the ready talent for that. So, anything, Kopal, Isaac, you would like to add?
I think the IP protects and helps the startup ecosystem as well. And so and I echo exactly what Radhika said, in our own, Wabtec India Technologies at our Wabtec that we have, most of the patents are now coming out from Bangalore region itself, and you'd be surprised with the number of ladies also that hold patents from our center. So I think it's an open domain, and everybody's kind of, it's in their mental framework, definitely at this point in time. But yes, how do you make it something which is cultural to the Indian ecosystem? And that is where, even for startups, it is important that, they're able to protect their IP when they are developing when they're solving new problems. And that helps, again, the whole economic growth of India per se. So I think, thinking around that is certainly critical. I mean, there's no other way to do it.
And a fantastic point that you added, that